James, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
The Supreme Court has ruled that there's no constitutional right to abortion. Could you explain a little about their reasoning?
So the court said that if we are going to have a right to abortion, it has to be protected under traditional understandings of constitutional law when the amendments that are affecting our constitutional rights were enacted. And the court went through a very long history from the 14th century on up to current times and found there is no traditional common law right to an abortion. And therefore, when a court reviews a law restricting a right to abortion, it's going to have rational basis review, meaning that if the government can come up, a state can come up with a good reason for restricting the review, the court is going to say, okay, we will accept that reason. And that is because the ability to have an abortion is not considered to be a fundamental right with long tradition in the history of American and the common law.
And is there anything that stood out to you, particularly in the majority opinion?
Well, the majority opinion did something that was rather unprecedented in the way that it overturned this 50-year precedent by relying so heavily on traditional law and really not focusing an awful lot, and this is what the dissent took it to task for, was some of the policy implications of a ban on abortions or restrictions on abortions. So I think the court was quite clear saying, look, we are going to read the Constitution as it was written, as it was understood at the time it and the relevant amendments were adopted, and we're not going to inject our own policy preferences. It was very, very strong in saying that. And I haven't seen opinions from the court being that forthright about what they're doing in quite some time.
And could you explain a little more about the dissenting opinion?
The dissenting opinion written by Justice Breyer was very strong and just lamented the change of the law that this will cause. And the court was saying essentially that the majority, especially the 5 members of the majority who were part of the main opinion, were doing this without principle. They were violating a well-established right. They are ignoring the fact that when the Constitution was adopted and the amendments were adopted, women didn't have any rights. So how the dissent asks, should we be paying attention too much to the way things were back in the 1800s when the Constitution was amended to incorporate the Bill of Rights? The court continued saying that this is very unprincipled of the majority opinion, and it said that this essentially is turning a court from one of law into one being made by individuals. So it was a very strong and stark opinion. You can show there is profound disagreement philosophically with the majority on the account of Breyer and the other dissenters, Kagan and Sotomayor. And I think it's perhaps Justice Breyer's swan song of trying to tell the world that he thinks that the new majority of the Supreme Court is out of bounds.
Do you think state lawmakers will now start introducing more pro-life and pro-abortion legislation now that this has happened?
Oh, I think the states are going to become very, very active. As President Biden said in his address to the people a few moments ago, or about an hour ago, I guess now, he said that we, the Democrats, are going to have to redouble our efforts in the state houses and the legislature and Congress. And the Democratic Party is going to make this a very big campaign issue. On the other hand, conservatives are going to do the same thing, and they're going to make it a rallying cry for their side that if we want to preserve the right to life, then we're going to have to, they're going to say, to redouble our efforts there. So I think the state houses are going to be very active. A lot of them have laws restricting abortion. A number of them were ready to go. They would be triggered by this decision today, so they're going into impact immediately. But there's going to be all sorts of debate at the state level, which is exactly what the majority said should happen. The states should start debating this themselves rather than relying on a majority of the Supreme Court to make this decision for them.
James Burling from the Pacific Legal Foundation, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.